This is Mike from Heaven Shall Burn, and you're watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Richard Metal Fan Interviews. This is episode number 45, and today's guest we're talking to Mike from the almighty Heaven Shall Burn. He is the guitarist and one of the founding members. Today we're going to be talking about him getting into metal, what made him want to pick up the guitar, as well as like the history of Heaven Shall Burn, as well as like songwriting, lyrics, and a plethora of other topics. So without further ado, let's go talk to Mike.
So what's up, guys? I'm here with Mike from Heaven Shall Burn. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Sun is shining in Germany, like a fine February winter day. So I I'm pretty happy today.
That's awesome to hear. So basically, this format is I want to go through your catalog, go through the albums, as well as your musical journey from where you started to now. But let's just dive right back into the very beginning. What were the first bands that got you into metal, and what made you want to pick up the guitar?
Um, well, definitely most important band that made us making music was Bolt Thrower. Like this energy, this tank rolling all over you, that was the musical feeling we wanted to reproduce, and we were fascinated by. And yeah, that feeling was something we were also, with our limited musical skills back in the days, we were able to reproduce, like this rolling riffing without like being totally technical, like, I don't know, Pestilence or Morbid Angel or something like that. More, but Both Rower was more like about the feeling, the energy, the going forward, and that was definitely the band that brought me into metal music as an active part. Like listening to metal music. I listened to, I don't know, I think I started to listen to Scorpions, of course. I'm from Germany, so it
Yeah.
was definitely Scorpions. um, with like 11, 12-year olds, something like that. But if you ask about the band making me picking up a guitar, that was definitely Both Thrower. Yeah.
All right. And so, how did Heaven Shall Burn form? Because y'all formed in '96.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't Heaven Shall Burn back in the days. So 96 is like the earliest moment you can nail down something that is related to our today's lineup. And I think the band back in the days was called Before the Fall. And but we already had, I guess, three of the members we still have today. So that was pretty much yeah the, the roots of the band. And we were just, kids in the neighborhood in our county that found together at metal and hardcore shows, had the same interest in metal and political hardcore. I mean, back in the days, bands like Snapcase, Earth Crisis came up, and we were all metalheads, but were also fascinated by this energy of that political new school hardcore, especially Earth Crisis, and to combine that metal sound with a political message of bands like Earth Crisis, for example, was something we totally wanted to do. And that was just like a bunch of like-minded kids starting a band. Like, what that happens every day, but we we remained active till today. So
Right, and then Heaven Shall Burn, the name. Like a lot of people say it comes from the Marduk album. Were you all like fans of Marduk at the time? Were you aware of that album?
yeah, we were aware of the album. Yeah, actually, that when the album came out, we were like, oh, we were just about to release our first mini CD, like an EP, mini LP, and our name was still Consens, and that didn't sounded very aggressive, like band named Consens, that was kind of new schoolish hardcore like and not very metal like. And that was actually the last opportunity to change your name, before the first real release. And when that Marduk LP came out, I guess our bass player Eric Eric came up with that, and he said, "Wow, that would be actually a very cool band name, and it's kind of, I don't know, known expression in the metal scene, as there is these Bathory lyrics also about heaven shall burn when we are gathered." And yeah, so we thought it was a very, very cool name. And back in the days, it was very, very common to have these names with a lot of words, like, I don't know, blood has been shed, heaven shall burn, and or Killswitch Engage or something like that. And so we chose a name like that. Yeah.
And then in 1998, you dropped your debut EP in Battle Though There Is No Law, which obviously the name comes from the Bolt or album. And then you got signed to the Deeds of Resolution label. How did they find you guys?
That was actually a friend of ours. That wasn't the real label. And the label was just founded to release our EP, and it wasn't the real label back in the days. They released a few good records after us, but starting point for the label was our EP as well. And yeah, I mean, back in the days, we just thought it would be a great idea. We were all huge Ball Thrower fans, so our first release should be named the same as the first Ball Thrower release. I mean, looking back on it after more than 20 years, and now we are a well-established band, at least in Europe, and it may sound or is kind of strange that we stole a name from the first Both Row record, but back in the days we were just kids, not aware that somebody outside of our county would ever hear of us or be aware that there is a band that released something like that. So it was just I don't know, a kid's thing to do it like that, but it has a certain charm to it, so we didn't change it today. So yeah.
Okay, and then, and I believe in '99, you also did like some splits with your fellow German in Caliban. How did you all like collab with doing some that splits?
Oh yeah, with Caliban, that was because at the time we got signed by Life Force Records, and Caliban were on that label as well. And I mean, back in the days, it wasn't called metalcore. That term didn't exist. But to talk of a metalcore scene in Germany, that was very, very small, And when you played shows in Germany or in Europe, you would most likely play with the same band. So we met Caliban a lot of times and played with them, and they became good friends. Were on the same label, and from the hardcore ethics, the label also supports, and the metalcore, hardcore punk attitude we had, it was pretty obvious to do a split record. Like split records were very common back in the days.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was something we just wanted to do, because you could also share resources. The label didn't have to spend too much money for 2 releases, and you just did a split, so that was a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we're
totally.
still talking about doing a split program number 3 with Caliban, so they're still very good friends, and I'm pretty sure that will happen one day.
Yeah,
A lot
yeah,
of
that would
fans
be awesome.
ask about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people say label you as metalcore, but also consider you like melodic death metal. How do you feel about the label categorizations? Because I remember hearing like Matt Heafy from Trivium describe you guys as like hardcore kids playing like a Monomart style riff.
Yeah, I mean, that was very, very cool. Actually, we played the first show Trivium ever played outside the US was when they supported us. And I mean, I met Matt when he was like 16 years old, maybe. His father was still on tour, and like these kids
Yeah,
were just playing so awesome. I just couldn't believe it. Like, I mean, they're not a lot younger, but if you're like 19 or 20 or something, and somebody comes that is 16, that still seems like a huge gap. And so we just couldn't believe how good these kids were, you know, and they were very, very friendly, such a great band, and they're still great friends today, you know. And when we met them, it was instantly a friendship, and yeah, very, very cool memories to the first Trivium gig back in the days. And but the metalcore label, I don't know. I mean, back in the days, metalcore was something that was kind of a neutral term. Then, I don't know, end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s or something, or middle of the 2000s, 2010 or something, it was like a swear word, you know. Nobody wanted to be a metalcore, and it was very, very negative. And nowadays, metalcore is quite a positive label again, you know. So we actually don't care how people label us and in what box they sort us. It's we don't care. Actually, we play melodic death metal, you can say so. And but our ethics are very, very rooted very much rooted in the hardcore scene. So maybe that's why many people consider us a metalcore band. But yeah, to
All
me,
right.
many metalcore bands just, I don't know, sing about relation problems, or I don't know, problems with their dads or moms and stuff like that, and are not very political. But that is something that is Heaven Shall Burn is totally about, you know, being a political band. So actually, you can say we are a metal hardcore band, but not a metalcore band.
Totally. And then 2000, you dropped the first Heaven Shall Burn album, Asunder. I think it's a really great starting point for you guys, and I love how you also covered Bolt Thrower's Fourth Crusade. What made you guys to cover that song in particular?
That was just because we were young and naive, you know. I mean, nowadays you would never cover a Bolt Thrower song because it's something untouchable, you know. At least maybe the first two records or something you could cover it, you know. But later songs, like the energy they have, like the certain feel to the music they have, I think it's something you shouldn't cover, you know. So we just did it because we were young, and I didn't think a lot about it. Nowadays we have far too much respect, you know. And I mean, it was meant respectful in the days, back in the days as well, to cover that band, you know, don't get me wrong, but we wouldn't do it today. And I think it's not a bad cover song, it's not a bad cover version of Bolt Thrower, but I don't think anybody needs it, you know. If you want to listen to the Fourth Crusade, you can listen to the original, and that will just blow you away. And there is no need to cover it. It's just perfect the way it is. And there's a few bands out there you just shouldn't cover, you know, and Bolt Thrower is one of them.
Right. And then moving forward to 2002, you dropped Wherever It May Take. Was there like pressure to follow up Asunder?
No, not at all, because Asunder was very much an underground thing. You know, it sold quite well in Germany and in Europe, and had also some attention in America and South America, but it wasn't like a huge success on a on a huge label or something. You know, it was still a Life Force release, like a very good underground label, but not something like Nuclear Blast or Century Media. So there was no pressure at all. And we didn't consider us as a professional band, or ever had the plan to become professional musicians or something. So there was no pressure at all. No.
Yeah, and it's this that album just sounds very raw sounding. It just all sounds just more death metal than anything, just very old school death metal sounding.
Yeah. Yeah. It was because our musical skills, of course, improved a lot. And we were able to play more complicated stuff and put the melody into the songs we wanted. You know, when we recorded Asunder in our first mini, we just it was all about the energy, you know. And the producers, of course, they focused on the energy to transport that, because there were no musical skills to show, you know. But that kind of changed for Whatever It May Take. There was still that energy, but we were able to bring the yeah, the hook lines, the melodies in as well. And maybe that's why you think it's even more death metal like, yeah.
Yeah, and this year is also the 20-year anniversary of this album. Do you have like a different perspective about it now as opposed to when you first put it out?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, but like we are looking very positive on that, I mean, 20 years, that sounds, I don't know, ancient times, we could never imagine that being around for 20 years and looking back on the record you released so many years ago, or a band that you founded 20 years ago. But we are aware that it's very, very hard to reproduce the feeling of the record. We talked a lot about maybe re-recording the record, because not everything is perfect about the sound of the record or how we played it and everything, but we always feared to lose the feeling of the record if we re-record everything. You might re-record certain tracks, or there is still some demo material from that era we didn't use for songs or something like that, but we would never re-record the whole record like some bands do. That would just not do justice to that record. You would lose the feeling. People who are used to that special sound would be disappointed. It would be negative in all matters, I think. So yeah, we are looking back very positive on the record, and there's nothing we want to change a lot about it. I mean, there has been a remixed version of it. So I think the re-release you get from a Life Force record is the remixed version of it. It's not the same sound as the first press, but that is of course all done with the original files and mixed by the same guy, and so it still has the same feeling.
All right. Then going to 2004, we get Antigone, and then of course this is the first album we did with Century Media. How did Century Media find you guys?
Well, Century Media is especially Robert, the owner back in the days. I mean, he's a musical nerd, like very, very expert in every underground matters, all kinds of metal. And of course, we were kind of known in the German underground, and he became aware of us, And there were these few German metalcore bands, like Caliban, Niara, Heaven Shall Burn, Maroon, and metalcore became kind of I don't know, a hype. And of course, also these labels were like Nuclear Blast, Metal Blade, Century Media in Europe. They were looking for the best metalcore bands in Germany because it's the biggest market, of course, and we were one of them. And probably, I think Caliban back in the days was the biggest band. I think they got signed by Roadrunner, if I remember right. And yeah, so we got an offer, I guess, from Metal Blade and Century Media, and talked to the people, and they were all very, very nice, really cool people. And we are still aware that there are really cool people. They proved it during many years of business relationship. But we choose Century Media because yeah, there were a lot of really cool bands we loved, on Century Media back in the days, like Unleashed, Tiamat, and then all these
Great bands.
death metal icons back in the days. And that was something we were very flattered about, and it was the third record, Antigone.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know what they say, make it or break it with a third record. So it was the most important one for us.
Yeah.
And it was a good step to go to Central Media.
Yeah, and it has probably like my favorite song on there, "The Weapon They Fear." I just love that song. Especially I love the Empiricon videos that you did. Like I think Parkway Drive actually covered that, and then Heaven
Yeah.
Shall Burn actually did that. What made you all decide to like cover each other's songs?
Oh, it was when we were back in the when we planned that tour, I was talking to the Parkway Drive guys, and you know how it is. If you put together a tour, it's always like, oh, who's headlining, who's playing last, who's playing before, and you know, I mean, we are friends, but still, it's very hard to find the solution. You know, who's bigger in that market, and who's headlining here, and who's headlining there, and so we just decided, okay, just let's mix it all together in that show. You know, Parkway Drive is playing 3 songs, then Heaven Shall Burn's going on stage playing 3 songs, then Parkway Drive again, then Heaven Shall
Wow.
Burn again, then Parkway Drive comes and plays a Heaven Shall Burn song, then Heaven Shall Burn comes and plays a Parkway Drive song, so people in front of the stage would totally be like, oh, what is going on, you know?
That just
And
sounds crazy.
that was a great tour. There's you know, I don't know if you saw that a mini documentary from Impericon about the tour, how we planned everything, and it was
Yeah.
great, you know, like being on stage, playing 3 songs, and then just lights went out, and when lights go on, Parkway Drive is on stage and playing, and people were just not prepared, you know, and
How'd
it
you all
was a
set that whole thing up, like switching back and forth? You had to like, you had like
it was
different.
like, technically it was hell, you know. We had like two mixing desks and 2 fully microphone drums and backlines and everything. Of course, you know, that was very hard to plan everything, but it worked out, and our technical crew did a great job. And yeah, it was definitely something people still talk about today. You know, it was a great thing.
Yeah. And then moving on, we got Death to Our Prayers. I love this album, especially it has probably one of my favorite Heaven Shall Burn songs, Profane Believers. What's that whole song about?
Yeah, Profane Believers is just about people who are very religious, and within their, you know, religious fanatism. Does that word exist? Fanatism? I don't know.
Me.
You know what I mean. Like, while being religious fanatics, um, they just forget about what their belief really is about. You know, like the other day, I just read an article about a priest in, I think, in Texas or somewhere, who baptized with the wrong words. So like a few thousand baptisms in that community might be invalid or something like that. And which is, I don't know, belief shouldn't be about like using the right words for baptism or something like that, you know. So, and I mean, just look at the Pope, you know. He sits in the palace, has golden rings and everything, and talks about supporting the poor, you know. That is not what his belief actually should be about, you know. And so those people, to me, are profane believers, you know. I can totally accept it if somebody has like a very true personal belief or religious belief in something, you know, from his very, very inner self, you know. I can accept that, but like organized religion to me is just, those people are profane believers, you know.
Absolutely. So moving on, 2008, you dropped probably my favorite Heaven Shall Burn album, Iconoclast. I think this album is big. I feel like this. Do you feel like this is pretty much where Heaven Shall Burn started to get more well known, especially at that time?
Yeah, yeah, that was a very important record, and of course, like our biggest hit, Endzeit, is on that one
That's
as
like my
well.
favorite song from you guys.
Yeah, you're not the only one, of course, and that is a very, very important record to us. Yeah, it has like a really cool sound, great songs on it, a really cool cover as well, done
Yeah.
by Basti from Callejon, the singer of the German band Callejon. I
Wow.
don't know if you know them.
No.
And yeah, it's just a great record. Maybe till today, what our most important record, you can say so, I think.
Yeah, like Insights, Forlorn Skies, even like your guys' cover of Black Tears by Edge of Sanity. I just think the album is just ass from start to finish.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Right. And it's funny because you also did like 2 other parts of Iconoclast. You did like the live DVD Builder Strum. in 2009. I mean, how did you all decide to make a live DVD?
Yeah, I mean, back in the days, it was quite common to do that DVD, and there's also a documentary on it as well. And yeah, with that documentary, it's like all made up about the band, you know, like we have weird professions and just tell people bullshit in the documentary, but we just wanted to show how media can manipulate you, you know, just because something is pressed on DVD or shown on TV, it doesn't mean it's true, you know. And still today, I get questions from journalists that are about this documentary who didn't get that it was like all made up, like a huge hoax, you know. And that's still very funny.
Yeah, and then moving on to 2010, you get Invictus. What was it like going from Iconoclast to Invictus?
That was we kind of felt some pressure, you know, because Iconoclast was such a huge success, especially having a song like Endside on it, and then releasing a LP after that is quite challenging, you know, because you have to decide what you want to do. You go more brutal, you go more epic, or but in any case, the record has to be, I don't know, on eye level with the record before, you know. And
Yeah,
that was when we felt some pressure, yeah. And that's maybe why the sound on Iconoclast is on Invictus is maybe a little overproduced from today's point of view, because we just wanted too much, you know. And all that internet MP3 music listening came up as well during that time. And if there are certain playlists and stuff, your song has to sound brutal between all the other songs, you know. I mean, imagine somebody listens in this playlist to Hatebreed, um Hatebreed, Killswitch Engage, In Flames, Heaven Shall Burn, and Cannibal Corpse, and between all these great bands and sounds, your sound has to sound brutal as well, you know. And that's why you push every single song to the very limit for the sound. But that makes, of course, the record, if you want to listen to the whole 50 minutes of the record, maybe too much for your ears, you know. And that's what I mean with the sound is maybe a little overproduced. Every single song sounds very, very brutal, but as a whole, the record, it might be difficult to listen to it with headphones for 50 minutes.
all right. Then going forward to Vito, another
Yeah,
great album. I love love how you actually did like a. I think it was the first time you all did like a song in German. Die Strom Dick. What made you all decide?
yeah, the storms are calling you.
Oh, so that's what it sounds like. What made you all decide to do a song in German?
Yeah, it's just actually a few lines in German. Um, we, I don't know, sometimes it's very, very difficult writing lyrics in German, you know, because German is a very, I don't know, specific language. You don't have like catchphrases or something you can use in English. Like in English, a song text is written quite fast, you know, because you have certain expressions you can use. But in German, every word can mean 1,000 things, and it's very complicated to not sound like, I don't know, stupid, you know. But once
Right.
in a while, you find a really cool sounding line, but that's not enough for a whole song, you know. So that's why we sometimes name songs in German or have a few lines in German. Like Endzeit, for example, is also a German word for end time. And yeah, so that is the reason, because to give it like a more new dimension of the lyrical meaning, you know. So that's especially in North and South America or in Asia, people are very interested in the German lyric parts of Heaven Shall Burn, because it's something they don't get on the first view, you know, and they ask about it and are very interested in it.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And then I think this is also the last album with your original drummer, Matthias. Why did he leave?
He was very busy with his studies on university as well, and then he had like a quite severe back injury as well,
Oh
and
shit.
couldn't play for like that Vito record is because of his back injury. Daniel from Carcass played that record.
Oh,
But Matthias didn't record the Vito album.
oh, I never
So
knew that.
we called our friend Dan from Carcass, and or back in the days he wasn't even in Carcass, but now he's playing in Carcass, and he recorded the record for Matthias, and yeah, which is quite a pity. He's a great guy and still very involved with Heaven Shall Burn, and but after being forced for having a break for almost 2 years, it's very hard to come back, and especially on the musical level we do, and he just didn't want to risk being on tour for a month and getting his back problems, injuries back. I mean, I still make music with him once in a while. We have like a kind of a smaller band, and where I play with Matthias, some both roll like death metal as well. And so he's still making music. He's still caring about social media stuff for Heaven Shall Burn, and fan mails and postal stuff and everything. So he's still around, but not playing drums anymore for Heaven Shall Burn. Yeah.
All right, and then you got Christian Bass, who's currently playing drums at the L. How did you find Christian?
Oh, he's been a very old friend, also from the German metalcore and metal scene. He used to play drum in a melodic death metal band called Nightingales. I don't know if you know them, from Germany. It's like in Flemish death metal. They started out really early, I think even in the middle of the 90s or something like that. And we're also Nuclear Blast Records.
Nice.
And yeah, and we know him since ages. And we know he's a great drummer. And when Matthias was very occupied with his studies on university, he helped us out on several tours, so we already knew him since years. So yeah, it was like a very logical choice to have him as the new drummer.
All right, all right. And when you joined Heaven Shall Burn, do you have him listen to like Vito, Iconoclast, all the class albums and be like, this is what you need to do? Or did you wanted him to bring his own mix to Heaven Shall Burn?
Um, we offered him something like that, but he was very, very respectful towards Matthias. And even today, if he records the drums and there are certain fills, we talk a lot about how Matthias would do it. And so of course, during the years, he brought in his own style, of course, but there is still a lot of stuff he plays in the vein of Matthias drumming, which is very typical for Heaven Shall Burn, I think. And as Matthias, Chris is a drummer playing very, very how should I say, very, he's not keen to be on the front end of the band. He really serves the band and serves the songs and puts the energy in without being very obvious, like a drum monster or something like that. But they are both great drummers, and their skills are far above what they show in Heaven Shall Burn. But they always want to serve the song and not themselves, and that makes them so valuable for the band.
Right. Did he bring in something like new rhythmically to Heaven Shall Burn that you all didn't before, which would it be shown for Wanderer?
Sorry, again, what was that?
Like, did Christian bring like something like new rhythmically to Heaven Shall Burn, or maybe something new that y'all didn't have before leading up into Wanderer?
Yeah, especially in the calmer parts of the record, especially on Wanderer, Chris shows us more like a bit more of jazzy or rock drumming and something like that. That is definitely something he brought in. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just love this album. I especially love how he did like collaborations with Corpsegrinder from Cannibal Corpse, and of course Nick Hippo, formerly of As I Lay Dying. Did they like sort of like working with them, like be like sort of like bringing some like new elements to Heaven Shall Burn that you could like experiment with?
Yeah, that was something like working with Corpsegrinder. Fisher was definitely like a wish of our singer Marcus. He's a huge fan of him, and he was Cannibal Corpse were playing a gig at quite quite near where we live, and we just drove there, and of course with the management and did the date, and then we just recorded them backstage, uh, and then we went there at noon and put up like the recording gear, and it was really great to work with him like face to face, not like how people work today with like sending files and wave files during through the internet or something. So we just really went there and recorded him live, face to face. And I can tell you, he's the most brutal death metal singer I ever saw in my life. It's
Yeah.
it's it's insane, really. Like how loud he screams in studio, like his voice, how he can control his voice and everything. It was just absolutely amazing, really. And since that day, I'm a total Corpsegrinder fan. He's to me is the best death metal singer in the world.
Can confirm
And
I saw him like last Friday, and he was sick.
yeah, I mean, on stage it's something. Of
Yeah.
course he's a beast on stage, but if you see somebody in studio, it's something different as well. Many death metal singers have like their technique and are not singing so loud, but it still sounds very brutal when recorded and something. But Corpsegrinder just approaches the microphone and destroys it. you know there is
Yeah.
there is nothing he thinks about, or he's just screaming at the microphone, and it's just sheer terror. Like after all these years, I mean, this is not like a 20-year-old kid starting in the death metal band and still having the energy from such a youngster. Like this is a grown-up man, like playing in a death metal band for decades, and he's just amazing. That was totally demonstration of power. Yeah.
And then your latest album of Truth and Sacrifice. I love this album. Being as this was the first album since 2016, did you consider this just picking up after Wanderer? Or is this almost kind of like a new start for Heaven Shall Burn in a way?
Well, no, you can't say so. I mean, we're not a band that tours like I don't know, 8 months a year or something like that. We all have our jobs and everything. I mean, we could easily live off the music. We're a very big band in Germany. Like Truth and Sacrifice, for example, hit #1 in German charts.
Nice.
But we all decided to have a life beside the band, and that's why we also have the energy that the band, that there always is something happening. We are always writing songs, we're always rehearsing, even if we don't go out and play shows or record stuff. So, but we are not we don't depend on releasing records or being on tour. So that's why sometimes it takes some time between the records, but then of course you just have a creative outburst, after all these years. And that's what happened for Truth and Sacrifice. It became just a double album, almost 100 minutes of new music. And I think that is quite a statement in times where bands just release singles on Spotify. We just put out the double record with 100.
Right. Was there like a preconceived idea to make a double album, or being as it took like 4 years between Wanderer and Of Truth and Sacrifice, did you have just like a lot of material written for it?
Yeah, when we started writing the songs for it, as I said, we're always writing songs, but when we started, we very early we realized how much creativity was in us, and that it wanted out, and that it will become at least a very long record. And when we realized how diverse the songs and ideas are, that was pretty early we found out that it should be a double record, also as a statement in modern music business times, where a double record is kind of anachronistic. But yeah, I think we just wanted to show that we are able to release a double record. That is something that is very challenging for a band.
Right. And musically, do you try to like experiment with your sound, or is there like a usual formula that Heaven Shall Burn sticks with?
Yeah, everything is allowed. I mean, of course, sometimes we don't use ideas or song demos because they wouldn't be what Heaven Shall Burn fans expect. But that is also a reason we did a double record, because we did some experiments we never did for Heaven Shall Burn before, and we wouldn't dare to release some of the songs just on an ordinary record, but in a double record where you already delivered like a great Heaven Shall Burn record, you are free to use your weird ideas for the remaining 10 songs of the record, So that is what happened on Of Truth and Sacrifice.
All right. All right. And being as a guitarist, I'm always curious about like the writing. Does it like how do you all like start? Like, do you all like come up with like riffs and then the lyrics? How does that all come to be?
Usually in the beginning, there's a riff, and I play that in rehearsal room, and maybe the drummer jumps in, and if our drummer is not around, then I just record it with a drum computer to not forget about it. But almost every riff has to prove its quality in the rehearsal room, because if a riff doesn't work live or in rehearsal room, it's not worth being recorded. That's a Heaven Shall Burn philosophy. And yeah, that's the way we do it. I mean, sometimes I also have ideas for the lyrics, and I write them before a song exists, and then I just find the song that maybe pairs good with the lyrics, or a song I wrote in a certain mood that equals to the lyrics I wrote. But usually the riff is the first thing that is there, and then I think about the lyrics. But sometimes I have certain topics I want to write about already in my head when I write a song. So you can say the lyrics already influence the riffs as well. Yeah.
All right. And going into your live playing, is there like a similar energy to playing live as to recording, or they're almost kind of like two separate entities?
I think that is two totally different things. I mean, most bands try to bring their studio performance to stage, whereas we were always keen to bring our live performance to studio. Like that energy we have live should be captured on record as well. And if that doesn't happen, then the record is lost. Then it wouldn't be a Heaven Shall Burn record, because we are totally aware that we are, from our musical skills, we are not, I don't know, we are not Tesseract or a band like that, or Gojira or Meshuggah or something, that bands that are like music wise or from musical skills are totally outstanding. Heaven Shall Burn is about the energy, and
Yeah.
that has to land on the record, the energy and not the skills, and that is what we are about.
All right. Right. And kind of like going back to the songwriting, and I always love asking like artists this because I always get like a different answer. But how do you know when a song is done?
Sometimes we don't know. That is why sometimes we have live versions and record versions of songs. There are a few songs, like one of our most famous songs, Voice of the Voiceless. If you listen to it on the live recordings we have, and listen to the original one on the Antigone CD, it's a different version, because the songwriting wasn't perfect when we delivered it to the record. And we just realized, oh, okay, there's just one chorus too much in that song. Nobody needs that. And we just leave that out while playing live, because it's more energetic, And that happens once in a while. But yeah, when we know a song is finished, sometimes you just don't know.
Right.
Sometimes you just don't know. The only way to find out is um, there is no way to find out if a song definitely is finished if you wrote it and like 1 second later you want to decide if it's finished or not. There's no way you find the right decision to find the right decision. The only way is to put it away for a week and listen to it again, and then your decision might be more valid.
All right. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is like the German metal scene, especially when I think of like metal from Germany, I always think of like bands that are from like Berlin, Munich, Nick, but from Saalfeld, I'm always curious, was there like an active scene in Saalfeld that Heaven Shall Burn was a part of, or was it for the goal for the band like get outside of like Germany to like get and play in front of like different audiences and countries and stuff?
Um, yeah, well, bands that are very well known, usually they come from somewhere in the countryside or from small towns, but then they move to the bigger cities, of course, and then they come from Munich or from Berlin or whatever, like not every Stockholm death metal band or Gothenburg comes from Gothenburg. They are also from some of the villages or surroundings of those big cities. But of
Yeah.
course, they move to the big cities because there is an airport, where they can fly from, where they can do their interviews and everything. So, yeah, and we're actually from the state of Thuringia, where in Germany, where Saalfeld is, and that is a very, very underground active state in the metal scene. Like people in Germany even call it the Scandinavia of Germany because there's so many metal bands
Wow.
here, especially black metal bands. I mean, you have to imagine it. It's like the biggest city in our state has like 200,000 inhabitants, and that's it. The rest is just woods and lakes and mountains and stuff like that. So very black metalish countryside. And of course, that really forces people to play metal music, and there are many. There is a very, very vital underground scene here as well, and there's yeah, a few very well-known death metal bands as well, like Deserted Fear, for example, um, or the Apokalyptischen Reiter are very well known as well. And yeah, so this is a kind of hotspot of metal bands in Germany. And just because a band is from Berlin doesn't mean people are born there.
Gotcha. So before we go, I just want to thank you for this interview. Obviously, Lee, this is your latest album, but are you all like working on the next Heaven Shall Burn album? And hopefully, if tours are happening, it's still in the question, but tours are slowly coming back. We could see you out on the road a bit. Is there a chance Heaven Shall Burn can please come tour in the U.S. when this bullshit virus is over?
We are always working on US tours, but it's very, very difficult for us because we are not a band that can afford to play 2 months in North America. And most tours you get offered are like, I don't know, 60 shows in a row or something. We just don't have that time. But once we get a perfect tour offer that is maybe a month or even if it's just 2 weeks, we're definitely keen to come back. I think our last tour was in 2006 or something in the US. So actually, we never existed in the US. I don't know if even are there still people alive who saw us live in the US? I don't think so. And yeah, we definitely want to come back. And as I said, we're always writing new stuff, and there's definitely stuff in the making. And right now we are working on this um, big European tour we plan together with Trivium here in Europe,
Oh
and that
yeah.
will be a big thing. And preparing for that one, and of course to the summer festivals this year. Yeah.
Awesome. So everybody, Mike from Heaven Shall Burn. We'll see you next time.